Hello everyone, you're listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. This is a show all about Paris, all about France, the French people, the French language, and so on. If you are joining for the first time, well, I gotta say you've picked a pretty good time to join because this is the first episode of a new season, season 10, which is kind of almost like we're starting from scratch. It means you haven't really missed anything. You can pick up from here and get into it nice and easily. If I were to summarize the past 9 seasons in 30 seconds, this is what you missed out on, okay? I started really small and scrappy, interviewing anyone I could. The guests were really good, and it kind of grew quickly thanks to them. About 2 or 3 seasons in, I started a Patreon, which meant that through the membership, I was able to get a career out of this show. I wrote a book, Paris on Air. I wrote a children's book, Kai the Crocodile. Then my wife, lovely Lena, and I had a baby called Otis. That was 2 months ago. Then I released the audio from my book for the last season, and now you're up to date. And one of the things with this show is often I interview people and talk about their lives. Sometimes I talk about a topic. Sometimes I just tell a story. This is an episode today where I'm talking about a specific topic, and I got a French guest, Nico, who had a baby. Him and his wife Alex had a baby 3 months before we had Otis, and he's a Parisian man. I figured maybe he could shed some light through a discussion together about what it's like having a baby in Paris as a father. Because you see, there has been so much written, especially in English, about what it's like to be a mom in Paris and in France. I'm thinking of the book Bringing Up Bébé, also known as The French Children Don't Throw Food, which we talk about a little bit, written by a woman from a woman's perspective, written by Pamela Druckerman, who was on the show not too long ago, if you're interested in hearing from her. But this is from a dad's perspective. We talk a little bit about parental leave, how French fathers are in general, how they react to the sort of famous unsolicited advice that comes on the streets of Paris. We talk about all that kind of stuff, and we recorded it on a beautiful day outside. You might be able to hear birds and stuff in the background. But I'm trying something a little newer this season. I mentioned the Patreon membership earlier. Throughout this episode, you'll hear questions and comments from members who knew this episode was coming and who had a chance to submit their thoughts and questions ahead of time. So whenever you hear someone's message read out, they're a member of what I'm trying to make a growing community. So if you want to join them, patreon.com/the Eiffel Tower. Loads of bonuses too. I'll talk more a little bit about that at the end, when I'll also read out an email that comes with a warning of what might happen if you binge listen to this podcast too much, which is exactly what happened to Sarah. You'll hear more about that at the end of the episode. But for now, it's me and Nico talking about being a papa in a pandemic Paris. Keep in mind, of course, he hasn't written a book on the subject. He's just a dad doing his thing. I asked him for his perspective. I think he'd like me to make it clear he's not speaking on behalf of every French father, but I think you guys knew that, of course. Let's get into the conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, Nico, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good, very good, thank you.
I think before anything, I have to say congratulations on your son.
Thank you.
Congratulations for being a papa in a pandemic in Paris.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I'm very happy. Elliot is now almost 5 months old.
Right.
And yeah, we fell pregnant, I would say, in June last year. So that was like a little bit after the confinement.
Right.
And we've been very lucky and gifted with Elliot.
Well, let's talk. The one cool thing is that Elliot is 3 months older, like exactly, than Otis.
Yep.
So you guys, and it's your first child as well.
Yes.
So you're like the guinea pigs for us. Everything that goes wrong and everything you learn, we know exactly what to expect. So I'm glad that you're...
Yeah, actually, it's funny because like we had some friends who have a daughter. They are our guinea pigs.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like, I guess we just pass on information from one to another.
Everybody's learning from somebody, right?
Exactly.
Let's talk about first things first, like that whole idea of... And maybe we can compare stories even. The idea of having a pandemic baby. I think a lot of the listeners to this show are in different countries, and lockdown and confinement means a different thing for every person.
Yep.
And even that you had a baby 3 months before we did, it could have been different in the hospitals and so on.
Yeah.
Were you allowed in the hospital for the birth?
Yeah, I was. Actually, that was pretty scary because just a week before we had Elliot, I would have been allowed only between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. or something.
Hang on, what?
Yeah,
Just
so
4 hours
I could have been there for the birth, but then I would have had to leave and only could have visited like 6 hours a day between 2 and 6 p.m. or something.
That's so
2
weird.
and 8.
Why those hours though?
I don't know. It's very strange because like at the end of the day, what happened is that I was allowed to stay as much as I wanted, but I wasn't allowed to leave the hospital, which kind of makes sense, really.
Well, I had the similar thing, but I was allowed to leave just once a day. That was the rule for.
All right.
And we were at different hospitals as well. I think maybe there's different rules and different.
I think there were different rules. Yeah.
Right.
So our friends who had a baby like 4 months before, like he couldn't stay. So now we get very lucky because like when I think about how everything happened and everything, even though everything happened very, very nicely, I'd say, like there was nothing bad. Like it was just very long. But I don't know how you can do it if you're just on your own in the hospital with your like baby. Because Alex, my wife, was like very, very tired, and like if I hadn't been there, I guess it would have been very hard for her.
I think that's one. I want to know if you've noticed the same thing, but in these first months, I'm just amazed that anybody brings up a baby by themselves in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Like how they manage.
I don't know how you do it.
Like I could never have understood it until I had a baby, but now I'm like, wow.
I agree.
It's just amazing.
I know.
But I want to talk, one thing, I've got a lot of questions for you. Not least because you're 3 months ahead, but also because I think this subject of being a parent in Paris, a lot of people talk about being a mother.
Yep.
Especially in English, like you hear a lot of like moms telling their story. That's cool, but it's been sort of done to death. So it's cool to hear from a dad, and a French dad at that. I always love having French guests on the show. So if we start with that, being a dad, and I know that you've got mates who are French men who've got babies as well.
Yep.
Do you feel like it's like are you guys all kind of in on it together? Are you talking about your babies, or is it kind of you're too manly to do that, or you know?
No, yeah. I mean, I don't think we're very manly in France. I guess.
What in general, you mean?
No, but like I mean, I'm completely fine talking about babies or like I don't think it's not manly to do so.
Yeah.
So we're pretty relaxed with my friends about it.
Yeah. I should just interject. When I say manly to not talk about babies, I don't know if that's my conception in the back of my head or whether that's what the world kind of thinks. Like I don't think it's unmanly to talk about.
No, it's not.
Oh. But it could be in some countries.
Yeah, it could be. I guess I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, but no, I think like my friends, and the same way I am quite involved, or I try to be. Like, obviously at the beginning, also with breastfeeding, you're not as involved as the mother. That's just impossible. And my wife's doing so many things, and she's like very. She's like every minute with the baby. Really, it's crazy because she still hasn't gone back to work. It's only been 4 months. But I've been actually lucky a little bit because of the new way of working now, more from home, and I'm also lucky enough to have like a work where I don't really have strict times where I have to be there and leave. So I've been able to spend actually quite a lot of time with Elliot, and even though I have to work, like I always manage to like squeeze in a walk or like have lunch with him, or like it's very nice.
I actually read that, and we should talk about paternity leave. I think I read that there was a study that the French guy who was telling Macron to increase paternity leave for dads was saying how important it is for dads to be around when a baby's born. Like, it's very French. Is that something that French people think in general?
Yeah, I think so.
But then on the other hand, even though it's been extended recently, dads still get only 11 days. Is that 11 days parental leave?
Yeah, well, it used to be 11 days for birth before 1st of July this year. So now any baby born after 1st of July, you get 28 days. And I think
for the dad we're talking about.
For the dad, 28 days, and so calendar days. And out of these 28, I think maybe only 7 are mandatory, or maybe 10. I don't know. It's but well, the thing is, it's important for the dad to be involved, but also it just only makes sense if we're really looking for real equality between men and women. Also, because like if the dad only has 11 days, like it's still so much pressure on the mom to do everything, and it only makes sense that it's just longer. So I think 28 days is a good start.
So you missed out on that, and so did I.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did miss out on this one.
Just.
Yeah, because I was born end of Feb.
Yeah.
So
that was bad timing.
Yeah, well, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like we're lucky also in France because we have so much holidays, right?
So people who don't know, it's like 5 weeks, is it?
Yeah, it's 5 weeks, and in some professions you get an extra 2 weeks.
And there's like maybe 2 weeks worth of public holidays.
And then there's stuff, yeah.
But so, I'm interested in your opinion as a European, right? Like there are some countries in Europe, especially Sweden, and I think it's Iceland, where it's like
long.
It's like a year at least.
And I think in Canada also.
Right. And the dads have, in Sweden, I know for a fact the dads get 90 days of parental leave. 90 days. Yeah. Which is crazy, but even crazier compared to America, where I think it's 0.
Yeah.
But as a European, how do you feel like France is so advanced with the healthcare and everything?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's very odd for a country like France, where we have so many social benefits, that we don't have that. But actually, like, forget about the dads. I think it's kind of crazy that the moms only get 4 months. Like, that's just absurd. Like, you could get unemployment money for 2 years in France, but you only get 4 months when you have a baby, when you're a woman. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. I think to start with, it should be a year for the women, and then maybe the dad, it should be increased also. And I think also in these countries, they can just split that time between both parents the way they want it.
That's how it is in Sweden.
And I think that is just a brilliant idea.
In Sweden, you get rewarded the more you split it. If you do 50-50, you get rewarded even more. I think it's interesting, like there are some countries, there are people right now listening thinking that's crazy that you want more than that you're already getting. And then there'll be some people listening who are going, that's crazy how little you get. Yeah. It's funny how different it is around the world. Yeah, but I don't want to just talk about parental leave. I've got a lot of things I want to talk to you about. One of them is, including I've got emails from listeners with questions and stuff. But first, something I really want you to do, which is kind of maybe embarrassing, is I personally loved it at the hospital with all the French midwives who talked to my son in French and saying all these sweet words, calling him a little, I don't know.
Like a little angel,
all these words.
A little cat.
Yeah, cat, that's the one they always say, right?
So
I want to put you on the spot and ask you for a good 30 seconds to talk to me like I'm a newborn baby.
It would be easier if I had my baby, because it's very embarrassing when I talk to my baby in front of people.
Well, this is going to be even more embarrassing because you got to direct it at me, but I want you to give people at home an idea of what it sounds like when someone gushes over a little French baby. So go ahead, 30 seconds.
Coucou mon bébé, comment ça va mon bébé? Qu'il est mignon mon petit chat. Gilly gilly gilly. You know, it's like for ticklish. It's like
I've heard bonhomme a lot.
Bonhomme. Salut bonhomme. Comment il va bonhomme? Yeah. Comment il va bébé aujourd'hui?
It's sweet. It's very sweet.
It is sweet, I guess so.
You're just like a midwife, I can see. I think that anyone who has a baby should show it to a French person if they want to feel good about their baby.
I think one thing I say a lot is c'est qui mon bébé? Who's my baby? It's like a thing. I don't know why. It's like, who's my baby? Oh, it's you, my baby. Yeah, it's very.
Is that just you, or is that what everybody does?
I think a lot of people do that actually.
C'est qui mon bébé?
C'est qui mon bébé?
Oh, I love it. And the other one, mignon. You hear a lot, which is just cute,
mignon.
Sweet.
Yeah, one thing people ask you a lot about is well, obviously if it's a boy or a girl, usually, because it's hard to tell. But also like if they do their nights, and like
Yes.
we talk a lot about, well, people talk a lot about that in France. Like
You have to translate that, but when they say faire les nuits,
faire les nuits,
faire
ouais,
nuits.
de faire ses nuits, which doesn't really mean anything. Like it depends what you would expect from like a 2-week-old to
Yeah.
sleep. Like should he sleep like 12 hours by night? Probably not.
They're essentially asking, does your baby sleep through the night?
Yeah.
It's
And then they're
very-
like, depending on your anthem, they're like, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Or like, so it's kind of a weird way, like, it's kind of an opportunity for some people to complain. But I just think, well, you know, when you have a baby, it's like, you know how it is. So
That's
yeah.
like the second I've noticed that as well. The second
Yeah.
question, basically,
Yeah.
does he sleep through the night? And I didn't know how to answer it at first. I remember a guy asked me, and this was really early in the early days, and Otis had slept through that previous night the whole night. And I said to the guy, I was like, last night he slept the whole night. And the guy's like, he goes, oh, don't tell me that because my baby never slept. Oh, how dare you tell me that? And I was like, how are you meant to answer these people?
I don't know, that's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what people expect. In some ways, I feel like, I don't know, it's odd, but maybe some people expect you to tell them that, yes, you're very tired and it's very hard, and in some ways they would feel good about that answer.
I've come up with a good answer, though, that I think that ticks all the boxes. In English, to just say, we're coping. Would you say in French, je me débrouille, or...
Je me débrouille, yeah. Ouais.
And then
On
it's
se
kind of
débrouille.
like they can
Yeah.
read into, say it again.
Yeah, it's on se débrouille. On se débrouille.
Except it's very hard to pronounce for a
On se
foreigner.
débrouille. Because you have to say it as if it was only one word. On se débrouille.
That's one of those things that I remember when I moved to France. I have a friend, Mike. He might even be listening. And someone said, do you speak French? And he said, oui, je me débrouille. Like, yeah, I manage, but it's a very classy way to say I manage. It's like
Yeah.
very cool.
Je me débrouille is a bit like, actually, I'm quite good.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
problem is, because it's so hard to pronounce, when he said it, they were like, what? What did you say? so he didn't get away with it.
No.
But maybe I'll try that one out. But I've got an on-topic question about carrying, because I know you carry Elliot around on the
Yeah, on the baby carrier.
baby carrier on your chest.
That's amazing.
Before I had a baby, before we had a baby, a lot of people told me that in France, French people love to give you unsolicited advice. And because you
True.
take him around a lot, do you notice that? And
Yeah,
what do they
actually,
say?
it's been funny because it's like I take Elliot on my own, like go to the bakery or whatever, and then everyone would look at me as if like I'm doing something amazing.
Yeah.
And like every single day or any other part of the day, Alex is doing it and no one really watches her.
Really? So
I think there's still this thing about like when people see like a dad on his own with a baby, it's like very cute.
yeah.
Which I really like, by the way. But I mean, I'm not doing anything amazing. I'm just
carrying.
taking my kid.
Yeah.
But I don't really get so much advice. I think that my wife gets way more advice
Right.
on like, well, also from my parents
Right.
or from my mom.
Really?
Yeah, you should do this like this or like that. It's a bit
For
annoying.
the listeners at home, Nico's wife is from Australia, so that means your French mom
Yes.
is giving her advice.
Yeah, and
Does she-
and yeah, we have very different ways of doing things with kids, right?
Yeah.
Between Australia and France. So, I guess sometimes people can be a bit. I don't want to make a generality, but maybe a bit narrow-minded in the way to do things. Whereas maybe in Australia, like it's more new ideas.
Well, yeah, I bet there's a lot of differences. I mean, it's weird for, like, I haven't had a baby in Australia, so I can't compare it. I know you guys haven't either. And neither have Lena and I haven't had one in Sweden, so we can't, it's really hard to compare.
I guess people just like to give advice anyway. I try not to do it. Also, everything that relates to pregnancy, especially like pregnancy just before having the baby, really. I feel like every time you tell people the way you want it to be, or it feels like a bit of a judgment. If people want to do things differently, they get a bit upset if you tell them that you want it that way. And I don't know, I feel like there's a bit of a lack of like people don't share maybe enough. And there's a bit of judgment, I think, around all that. You shouldn't breastfeed, or you should breastfeed that long, or why would you breastfeed after 4 months? You know,
Yeah.
like, what if you want to breastfeed for 1 year? Like, why not? Actually, in
People
some
go lots
countries,
longer
that's
than
what
that.
people do.
Yeah. But we're getting dangerously close to the topic of being a mother in France. So I want to pull you back to being a father.
Yep.
I've heard rumors that you score better deals at the bakery because you've got your son on your chest.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you teach me how to do it?
Oh, you just show up, really.
That's
but
it?
every time, I make him smile.
Yeah.
And and then they're like, "Oh my God, he's so cute," and that's it.
That's it. The other
You
thing,
usually get a free thing, free
What do you-
croissant.
A free croissant. The French phrase that I just remember that I really like when I was walking around right after Otis was born and was very small. They say, "Ooh, il est tout petit."
Oui,
Tout petit.
il est tout petit.
Yeah, which
Oui.
is like
Too small. Yeah.
is it too small? Basically?
So small,
So it's
so
like
small.
tiny.
But it's like a cute thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's like, oh, he's so tiny.
People
he's
say
so
that
cute.
all the time. Tout
Yeah.
petit, tout petit. It's that, and
Il est
they
tout petit.
say it in French. Say,
Il est si petit ou il est tout petit?
il est tout petit.
Il est tout petit.
Yeah, and sometimes it sounds like.
But
the
they
same.
say it with a nice tone. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, il est tout petit.
Yeah. What's the response to that? Should I just be like, yeah?
Yeah,
I know.
it's like, yeah. What am I supposed to say? It's like,
Tell me your
yeah,
feedback.
he's super cute.
Tell me your feedback on this message I got in from Lisa. She says, I love watching French dads. They never seem like they're babysitting like in other cultures. They seem truly involved, right? And I responded, I was like, what do they do? What do you mean? How do they do it differently? And she says that they seem to share the responsibility in public without an air of, I'm doing this until I don't want to, then back to mom. Do you feel like there's an air of truth in that?
I guess so. It's hard to talk for everyone, yeah. But like, I am definitely, I recognize myself in this. Like, yeah, I don't intend to just come like every 5 minutes and like play with the baby and then back to mom for sure. Like I'm also very much into babies, so like I don't think it's boring to play with babies.
Yeah.
So I can do it for quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Do you think that's because that you're not like, we don't have to say how old you are, but you're not 18?
Well, yeah, there's also a reason why. Well, I've always wanted kids, but I've always wanted to have fun also.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it didn't match having a baby early for me.
Sure, yeah.
But to be honest, I say that now. It's not like I could rewrite the story, but also I only met my wife when I met her, right? And one thing that I wanted to make sure is to be with the right person, and it took a bit of time. So
I wonder.
how it
I bet
happens.
in Paris and all the other big cities, that age of becoming a parent is probably a little bit higher anyway, right?
Yeah, it feels like in Paris it's definitely over 30, which is not at all in France. I think overall in France it's around 25.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, in big cities and Paris it's definitely over 30.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And where are you from in France, by the way? Are you from Paris?
Yeah, I'm from the suburbs of Paris.
Okay.
So I grew up in the western suburbs where I could like bicycle right in front of my house.
So like
It's
west,
pretty
is
chilled.
that like Saint-Germain-en-Laye or something like
Yeah,
that?
exactly, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it's not like city.
No, but Elliot was born city, right?
Yeah, he was born in the 13th.
Isn't that cool?
I think it's yeah.
Well, I think
it's funny because like I think it's nice that it's written Paris on his passport, but that's it. I don't know. I struggle to picture because now I realize how nice it was when I was a kid to actually have the fields and like the forest and to be able to just grab my bike.
Sure.
And I feel like it's pretty hard in Paris when you're a kid because it's definitely not a kid-friendly city at all.
For sure. Certainly some neighborhoods more than others.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
For now, it feels like I'm pretty happy, and my wife and I are pretty happy to be where we are, and we don't intend to move.
Yeah.
But I'm more thinking ahead of like maybe when he'll be 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, right.
I feel like I don't want to have to come out with him in the streets every time he wants to go out.
We need to do a podcast episode again in 4 years on the same topic.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about prams and pushchairs in a second, but I think I'll go in for another message from a Patreon supporter.
Yep.
It's Naomi Vanessa, and she says she's a researcher who studies fathers, and she's always observing them with their children. It's just an occupational hazard, she says. A few things I've noticed. Fathers in France seem to do more of the chores related to childcare, like dropping them off and picking them up from school. I've noticed way more baby wearing by fathers, which is you and me. and lots of dads in the parks with their children when there's no mother present. I assume she's writing from America. In fact, she says, it goes on, just a few things. This is in contrast to the USA, where mothers do a lot more. This is likely a top-down cultural thing. The USA doesn't provide paid time off for fathers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I've noticed that too. A lot of dads in the parks. And
it's true. I think we're very lucky. It's funny because every time I talk with my dad about this, I feel like it's very unfair.
How so?
Because like at the time for him, there was very little chance that he could do all these things. You know?
Right. You mean because he had to work?
Yeah, there was this... I think things changed quite a bit in the last 30, 40 years, right? I'm 40, so like in the last 40 years. I think now it's just like the society changed and we're able to do all these things, and it's great. I'm sure that my dad would have loved doing it at the time, but it was just more complicated. So yeah, I think it's getting better. There's still room for improvement, but I think that dads are getting more involved. And
how does your dad, like? Does he say to you, "Oh, how great that you get to take all this time off and go to the park," or is he like, "Well, we didn't do it like that when I was a French papa"?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't tell me these things like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't like that at my time," because. I think he's just pretty happy that I'm happy with the way I do things. But in some ways, I don't want to get too much into it because I wouldn't want him to feel like he didn't do it for me in some ways. Like, it's fine. It's just like, things are just easier for dads now. And it's great.
And by the sounds of it, it's going to get even easier in France.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, for sure.
I mean, that changes that you said is coming in July when they get more parental leave. But then I think the guy that recommended it to Macron, because I was reading this right before we sat down, in fact I might still have it open, the guy that recommended it had actually recommended that dads get, I think, 3 months off.
Yeah, and it was more.
Yeah.
And it was more, and they settled for 28 days, but it's probably like a good start, and it's just the beginning.
Yeah. I've got it up here from the New York Times just last year that France doubles paid paternity leave to 28 days, one of Europe's most generous plans, and Macron is quoted by saying, "When a baby arrives in the world, there's no reason it should be just the mother who takes care of it."
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there you go. I'll link that story for people to read. But let's talk about prams for a second, because this is a huge thing in Paris, and every parent talks to every other parent about it, I've noticed. And we've got a very different approach to it, you and I.
Well, I love your approach.
Yeah.
It's it looks cool.
Well, so we've got something in common in that we both have had holidays in Sweden where it's also different with our prams as well, right?
Yeah.
So in Paris, it seems very in vogue to have a very small pram or pushchair, especially the Yo-Yo brand. We're not sponsored by them on the podcast, we can say it, but that's hugely popular.
Yeah, no, it's true, yeah. And I guess it's because also we don't have huge places. We don't have big elevators.
Exactly.
That's the big one, actually. It's the size of the elevators, it's tiny.
And I've heard the Yo-Yo fits onto the metro barriers as well when you go through.
Yeah, true, actually.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
It fits in pretty much everywhere. But the thing is, it's kind of like a toy in some ways.
Like a yo-yo, yeah. Maybe that's why it's called a yo-yo. It's just like a little plastic toy.
Yeah, I guess.
But it works there. And I remember I was in a coffee shop, Coutume, which is, they're friends of the show, Coutume. Everyone should go there in the 7th arrondissement. And the guy, I was talking to a guy there with a baby, and he said the best day of his life was when he changed from a big pram to a yo-yo, because Paris just does not suit a big pram.
Yeah, for sure.
Except Lena and I have a very big pram. Like, ours is like this vintage one. And I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating. When we walk down the streets of Paris in the 7th with that one where we live, we get stopped several times a day by people going,
I bet.
That is a big pram. Even like we had like a kind of hip hop cool young dude come up and he's like, tell me about that pram. And we tell him, like, why, you got a kid or are you expecting one? He's like, no man, I'm just interested in that big thing. And it's not, I'm looking at it now, it's not that big.
No, but it's, I don't know, it's like, it's old school, but in a good way, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's big for Paris, for sure.
And then the funny thing is, you've seen the opposite, because when you went to Sweden for your holiday,
Yeah. Everyone has like 4-wheel drive prams. And we were with a stupid yo-yo. And it was very hard. We were struggling. Because every time you go in the country also, like there's gravel, it's paved streets and everything is a struggle with a yo-yo. Actually, the yo-yo is only made for Paris. Tiny sidewalks, small elevators, like very small restaurant rooms where it's super handy to just be with that pram and you don't want another.
What about restaurants? Because when Elliot was born, the restaurants were all closed, right?
Yeah. So
and when Alex was pregnant, same with Lena, everything was closed. So I feel like we missed that pregnant in Paris thing. You hear about this politesse where people are like standing up for you on the metro or whatever. Like you guys and us, we have no idea what that's all about.
No.
But what about the restaurants?
But we another good thing with that post-confinement was that restaurants, they open way earlier.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's good when you have a toddler. Because now we can go to the restaurant at 6 p.m., which is really good for Elliot. It's the right time and it's very chilled. And we can have a 1-hour dinner outside. And then we just go home, and it's close to bedtime for him. So, and when you have dinner at 6, there's no one.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much on your own.
Yeah.
So we stay close to the house really.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it. But we'll see what it. I'm a bit scared of how it's gonna be when he'll be a little bit older.
Yeah.
Like when I'll be able to carry all the things, to touch everything, and to walk and to talk.
But I heard that French children are extremely well behaved. There was a book I had Pamela Druckerman who wrote it. French children don't throw food. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I heard about that, but it's a big pressure now because what if mine does?
Well, yours is half Australian. So
I started reading it. I was very surprised by that book. I didn't. Well, I guess also because I didn't have a kid. It didn't occur to me to think about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is,
because that went viral. She was on. She was on this show not that long ago, and I read the book before we had a baby too. So I want to reread it. But I never thought about it putting pressure on French parents.
I don't know. It felt crazy that for once, we're doing something good.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
I want to finish. In fact, I'll finish on two things. One is an email I got from Carl Beam. And he said he's American. He had a baby in Paris in 1990, also in the 7th arrondissement. And he said, we quickly learned that our US-made pram was useless for navigating Paris. Within a week after her birth, I strapped our firstborn to my chest and wandered all over town, just like you. The one consistent outcome was unsolicited advice from older Parisian women. Their opinion was unanimous. This is not the proper way to carry my child.
Oh, wow.
He says, by this point, I'd learned that I wasn't able to win any arguments using my version of the French language, so I thanked them each politely for their kind advice and promised to treat my next child much better. This response made no one happy other than me, but that was the point.
Wow, that's intense.
On that note, and knowing that you're talking to a lot of Americans and Australians, especially listening to this show, do you have any advice, and I know I didn't warn you of this, but maybe on the spot, for tourists coming to Paris with a very small baby? Any practical advice what they should think about?
Well, I think anyone should do what they feel comfortable with, honestly. The best advice is to not listen to anyone's advice and to do what you feel good about. I realized that if we're happy with my wife and I, if we're comfortable and we're happy and we're chilled, then the baby's chilled and everything's great. And it doesn't really matter to me what people would think about how we do things. So I think, that would be my advice. Would be just do you?
Yeah, you do you. Yeah.
You do you.
What about on a really practical thing? If someone comes up to, let's say we're talking to someone listening from Omaha, Nebraska right now, and they're thinking to come to Paris with their 3-month-old baby.
Yeah.
And they want to learn a phrase to politely tell some old French lady to get lost when they come up and give advice. Can you teach us all a French phrase that's polite but stern?
Yeah.
You know, thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's funny 'cause it would definitely like, I wouldn't like that at all. I'm just wondering what would be my reaction.
Yeah.
I guess my reaction would be just smile and walk off.
Not even say it.
Well, it's because like you don't want to start a conversation either. But I guess you just say thank you and then walk off and smile. Yeah. So like merci beaucoup, bonne journée.
Yeah.
And I think like it's always when people tell you off, it's always good to answer with massive politeness, you know, like extra politeness, so
Perfect.
people don't know how to react to that.
Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, bonne journée, au revoir.
There you go, everybody.
That's it.
You've heard it from Nico. Nico, thank you so much for sharing your time, and good luck with the coming months. I'll be taking notes from everything that happens with you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So there you have it. That was Nico. Interesting topic, interesting guy. I'm glad he shared his story. And isn't it wonderful? When the guest doesn't have something to promote, we don't need to spend any time talking about their latest product. So, a full conversation there. I enjoyed that one. And I hope you guys enjoyed the French language stuff in there. I certainly did. I'll be using some of that. Now, I did mention at the start that I'd read an email. This one came in from Sarah Foster. She sent in an email via the website. She says, Oliver, I first learned about your podcast in early March when I stumbled upon a walking tour on YouTube, and I sat for 2 hours in the middle of the night, mesmerized. Little reminder, subscribe on YouTube if you're more of a visual person. She says, I've been following you and Lovely Lena on Instagram ever since, and I'm hooked. Popping into your inbox to share a funny story. Yesterday I was binge listening to your audio experience while on a 15-hour road trip to Oklahoma for my cousin's wedding. 15-hour road trip. I guess with so much of you in my ear, it was inevitable that I would dream about you last night. Or should I say, nightmare about you? Here we go. You see, she says, I was talking to a man, a tattoo artist, explaining that I wanted a subtle and delicate Eiffel Tower on the back of my neck. This is deep, like there can probably be a lot that you can read into this, Sarah. She says, the man insisted that he understood what I was envisioning, and he went to work. When he was done, he jumped up and raced off to his next appointment at another location. It was then that I looked in the mirror and realized, to my horror, that rather than the Eiffel Tower, the man had tattooed a lighthouse, in capital letters, complete with blue ocean water surrounding it. I was devastated, in capital letters again, that the man had so horribly misunderstood me. And it was also at this point that I realized that you, Oliver, in fact, were said tattoo artist. I was so distraught over the miscommunication that I began sobbing uncontrollably because I'd be stuck with this lighthouse tattoo on the back of my neck for the rest of my life. What on earth, Sarah? Thankfully, I woke up and realized it was all a bad dream. What I learned from this is perhaps binge listening to you should come with a warning label, and also never let Oliver Yee near you with a tattoo gun, with a little reference to my book there, Oliver Yee. Thanks so much for the good times. Your podcast is such a gift. I've really enjoyed your audio experience. Best, Sarah Foster, Georgia, USA. I guess driving from Georgia to Oklahoma. What a drive. I did a similar drive mentioned in the book too, I guess, Georgia to Oklahoma. Amazing. What an unusual dream. I think there's a lot to unpack there. I don't think I'm the guy to unpack it, but let me know if you do ever get a tattoo of the Eiffel Tower or a lighthouse. I wonder why I would draw a lighthouse. There's a lot in there. I'm not going to get into it, but do send in a picture if you get either of them tattooed on your neck, and I will be sharing it. As for everybody else, I do indeed love to get your emails. I suspect I'm going to take a break for a while from reading out reviews and stuff. I think I'm going to focus on emails and, as I said in the intro, the Patreon community, people, members sending in questions and topic points related to the episode. So I'm going to get a little bit more organized with that. And as for next week, Then the episode next week, I'm not going to give it away, but it's a little bit about abandoned ghost towns, especially one that I visited with a really fun story for you. And we've already made the scroll for that. If you're a Patreon supporter, you can check it out, patreon.com/TheEarfulTower. There are no ads on this show, just occasional nudges that you sign up on Patreon to help me make the show better. I'll leave you with that. Thanks very much for listening, and I'm excited to see where Season 10 takes us. I've got grand plans, and I'm glad you're here for the ride. I'll see you next week. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.